everybody. I'm calling this Monday, June 9th, 2025, regular meeting of the Mancos RE6 School Board to order. Apologies for a little bit of a late start, but the time is 6:17 p.m. Heather, roll call, please.
Emily Hutchison-Brown.
Present.
Tim Hunter.
Present.
Craig Benally.
Here.
Rachel McWhorter.
Present.
Victor Figueroa.
There.
Excellent. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you guys for being here this evening. Please turn off your cell phones during the meeting. If you'd like to hold a sidebar conversation, you can take that out into the hall. I'd like to remind everybody that this is a meeting of the Board of Education in public rather than a meeting with the public. There is a time for public participation. Comments will be heard and will require anybody to sign up before the prior or the start of the meeting, and commentary will be limited to 3 minutes. When you're called on for comments, please state your name clearly for the record and exercise speech rights responsibly. This is a time for public comment and not discussion, just as a reminder. Okay.
Agenda.
Yep, we're on to the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. I'm sorry.
We need to add that capital reserve
Oh, that's right.
All right, so
resolution, please.
scratch that. Okay, so we,
I move that we approve the agenda with the addition of the capital reserve,
Of yep, right there.
use of the.
yeah, the capital reserve purchase resolution.
Right.
I was just trying to think of the right.
The right
terminology.
one. Yeah.
So we have a motion to approve the agenda with adding in the authorization for the use, or the capital reserve purchase resolution. We have a first. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Heather, can you please call to question?
Mr. Benally.
Aye.
Mr. Figueroa.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Hutchison-Brown.
Aye.
Ms. McWhorter.
Aye. So that will go in as K. All right. Motion carries. No, is there any discussion? No, good. 5-0, okay. All righty. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up here. Okay, before we start the meeting this evening, I actually, we do have some public participation, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and go do that so that we don't hold you up, and then I have something that I'd like to say. Do we have public participation for sure, Mr. Stubbs? Okay, perfect. Because I had received that email, I was like, I don't think I need to look at the list. Okay, so please, you're welcome to present, and if you could just remind everybody of your name, that would be fantastic. Thank you, and welcome.
Good evening. My name is Tim Stubbs. I'll be brief. I just wanted to follow up on an email dating back to, I believe it was October 21st of 2024. And just wanted to follow up on the matter of the school parking lot lights on Beach and Grand. In, I think, November, some shades were added to one of the 5 lights. And then afterwards, we received communication from the Director of Facilities indicating that they were satisfied with the matter and would not be making any other changes to the school lights. For us, my wife and I, and many other neighbors who live adjacent to that parking lot, the matter has not been resolved. There are 5 lights in that parking lot, and 4 and really 5 of the lights still cast their light into surrounding homes. I maintain my letter of October 21st, 2024 stands that those parking lot lights are not in compliance with Mancos Town Code, and I would ask that the school please consider buying dark sky compliant light fixtures that are downward casting and shaded and not shining their light out into surrounding neighborhoods. The school board has cited needs for security and safety we would not argue against that. In the last week, I've been told that there's been over a dozen vehicle break-ins in town. 2 nights ago, a vehicle parked directly across from that parking lot had its windows smashed in overnight. So I don't know if those school parking lots are helping with safety. And according to my letter, I cited several sections of town code, specifically 1612.3 and 1612.4. I believe the school parking lot lights are not in compliance with town code and being dark sky compliant. You shaded one light, 1 of 5. I'd ask that you please consider shading all of the lights. We've met with the superintendent, the director of facilities. I believe we've gone through the proper chain of command. I'm asking the school board to please try and address the issue and be a good neighbor to the surrounding houses. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Okay, as a board, we will circle back for discussion so that I want to be really delicate with this since we're going to have to crosswalk the ask to a new superintendent and Destry and Will and whomever was participatory, including the town. I did find that Mr. Armstrong was no longer with the town, so I furthered the communication to Heather so that she can also be a part of that discussion. So we will circle back to that appropriately so that we're all walking this correctly and doesn't get lost in the transition. Okay, now I'm gonna take a few minutes. I'm taking a few minutes because I was personally unable to attend the end of the year gathering and send off for all of our staff this year. And Mr. Hunter graciously stood in my place. And I believe that it is not just imperative to say these words to our community and our staff, and our board, and our families, and our students, but I think that Mr. Cordray needs to hear them as well. And that is to lift up that over the last 4 years of time, Mr. Cordray has poured in, I cannot even explain how many countless hours of dedication and heart into this school district, both for students and for staff. Upon arrival, he immediately took it upon himself to organize Mancus United, which was bringing a level of care and in service to this community, both inside and outside of these school walls. We have seen his efforts result in many positive gains, and it's important for the Board of Education to honor, reiterate, and thank Mr. Cordray for his dedication and service to our Blue Jay School and family and community. A few things that were observed by others that I actually did the homework to go out and email many, many people within this district as well as outside this district so that it wasn't my words. These are words that came from others. Todd was amazing with our students. They respected him and he inspired them. Several students were fortunate enough to learn from some of his teachings through CDL, real estate, and entrepreneurship. Some students even chose their pathway to entrepreneurship after taking his class. Todd has helped increase our capital reserves through diligent budgeting and use of grants and creative strategies to nearly triple its size. Mr. Cordray has shown me how integrity, professionalism, and teamwork can make Mancus shine as a school district. Mr. Cordray worked hard to add steps and a salary increase of nearly $9,000 for every single certified staff member over the course of his time at the Mancus School District. The strategic plan, while maybe not the most glitzy and glamorous, has had positive impacts across the district. These include the adoption of trauma-informed practices that support staff and students, professional development and student-centered strategies, and the creation of a portrait of a district that highlights how all of our work from PK-12 and all of the departments in between ultimately support students and their portrait of a graduate core competencies. Mr. Cordray crafted the portrait of a district to help everyone understand our foundations and our whys and the fact that we are all working for the student outcomes first and foremost. Another person said, I would like to thank Todd for his mentorship and his guidance. And another, I am appreciative of his vision for the broader mission of schools to take care of students and help them thrive so that they can grow to be great members and unique contributors to their communities. So in closing, as my personal comment, it is with the utmost respect and admiration that I am saddened to see Mr. Cordray, his leadership and his influence move on to Eton. Rarely do we find ourselves among professional leadership with greater character, integrity, and work ethic. And I will personally miss our ability to affect and guide change together through the leadership and the work that Todd and I wish you nothing but success in the future, along with many play dates with grandchildren and your children, only to be lined with a fair amount of Anda's mints, because those were always your favorite. I made sure I sent you off with some, and actually they're your wife's, which is even better, because his wife's favorite candy is what he demonstrated at this school on the daily, not even his own. You have made a difference, and you have left an indelible mark on this district in just 4 years' time.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything you've done for us. We really appreciate it. Does anybody have anything that they would like to add? I know I said a lot, so I said it all.
Just an echo of that.
Yeah. We really do greatly appreciate all you've done. And I think it's worthwhile lifting that up, because not everybody could be at the staff last day either.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, let me find my agenda here. Back to my agenda.
It'll be board reports, and I can go first if you'd like me to.
Sure, if you're ready, go right
So
ahead.
short. All right, BOCES, we haven't had a meeting.
Oh, there you go.
So I have emailed you, I just received, right before our meeting, I just received the newest newsletter from Royce. So read it if you'd like.
What do they do over summer? Do you guys break? Like,
Yeah, we're done. We're totally done until August.
Until August?
Yeah.
Okay, so in August, they just resurrect?
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Do you know what, this is a total board thing. If and when you know what dates they're gonna do meetings, can you share that with me so that I can share it with Audrey when I create our next year stuff, our calendar, our role,
yeah.
or at least maybe have an
Yes.
ask? That'd be
I'll
great.
find it.
I don't wanna set meetings on top of BOCES meetings.
Right, they're always
Just-
normally doing Wednesdays, but I'll send it
Just
to
send
you.
it to me, that'd
Yep.
be great.
And Wednesdays forever.
I'll say, yeah, if it's like a
I
Wednesday
don't
at
know these
4:30,
things because I don't go.
5 o'clock, cool.
Okay, we're gonna move on to LRC and CASB together.
Okay, so, the CASB, I just have a couple things on CASB. Some dates to put on your calendars, if you don't have them already. Some of them you've heard before. CASB Regional Meeting is coming up. This year it's gonna be on August 21st. It'll be from 4:30 to 7:30. And it'll be at the Durango High School, at the Impact Center. The CASB regional meetings are meetings with the CASB staff and with us regional colleagues. Basically, we're basically engaging each other on different practices, networking, and talking about various topics that affect all of us. If you do plan to go, I think our board president sent out an email to send Tiffany a note that says that
Register.
you will be attending, so that she can start the process of getting us registered. Okay, then we have our annual 85th CASB Annual Convention, December 11th through the 13th. It'll be in Colorado Springs, and the theme this coming year is the power of public education. And it highlights the passion, innovation, and successes happening in our schools and across our communities in Colorado. This year, CASB is asking for school boards across the state to submit their legislative proposals earlier than they've asked in the past because of changes and different timing that the CASB group has asked to do. So CASB is asking for proposals, legislative proposals, by June 13th at 5 p.m. And they're also asking for school boards to consider proposals to present at the next CASB's annual convention. And so they just would like any proposals that you might have to present at the CASB legislation, at the CASB annual convention, to be submitted also as soon as you might have availability. I think it's open till June 13th. June 13th is for the legislative proposals. But I think that the proposal for presentation to the CASB legislation, I'm gonna have to look up and share with you guys on email, because I don't have a date in front of me. But I think it's more toward early July that this needs to be done by. But I'll double check that and send you some dates. CASB 2024 Fall Conference and Delegate Assembly is September 5th and 6th. I usually go to those and represent our board. Prior to that though, we will get a packet, and I will send that packet to you with all the proposed legislations. And then I ask this board to review those and to give me any feedback that you might have as it relates to what this board feels they support and don't support. So that when I vote, I can represent this board. Okay, and then that is what I have for CASB and LSE.
Okay. Excellent. All right, moving on. We are going to, I think we probably are well served to start with our budget. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, actually 4 around budget, 1 around capital reserve, items to review. Do you want to give a brief overview, Chrissy, along with Mr. Cordray? Have you all decided?
Sure. So we are presenting a balanced budget tonight with no deficit spend in that budget, except for a grant. There's one grant that is going to, we collected the money in this fiscal year, did not spend it all, so I have to move that forward. So you will see a deficit spend in that beginning fund balance resolution for like $22,600, and that's what that's for. And that's only because we already collected the revenue this year. Okay. We should be ending, I'm predicting we should be ending fiscal year 25, our current budget, around $2,475,000. The reason we dropped from 3.1 million down to about 2.5 was basically because we did a ton of capital projects this year. Almost $800,000 worth of capital improvements on the campus. So we thought that was very important to make sure people understood that's why the beginning fund balance or ending balance, whatever, has dropped because of those things. We replaced windows in this building, we replaced roofs, we repaired the turf and the track back to operating capacity. We repaired our fire alarm system that had broken. What else did we do? We created a whole new entry over where Alice's office is, it's safer, added security cameras, and there's a new entry there that's safer. We did the shop ventilation. What else did we do?
HVAC.
Yep, HVAC. So we've done a lot of really great projects to the district that it needed to be done. So therefore, that's why the beginning fund balance is less. Other than that, there's not a ton of other things that we haven't discussed in great detail from the May budget, moving forward. Is there anything you wanna add to that? I mean, it's,
That's good.
really, that's where we're at.
It's a balanced budget.
It's a balanced budget.
But it's a tight budget.
That is true. It's extremely tight with all the capital projects that we did and that big spend into that reserve to do all those big projects. We didn't feel like we needed to dip into our reserves again and do a deficit spend. So the budgets are slim. I mean, we are going to have to be very careful with every expenditure in this next year, based on the student count that we built that budget on. Now, if our student count goes up, it'll give us a little more flexibility, but right now, we're just gonna have to start the year with a skinny budget, and we're just gonna have to do the best we can with what we have. So, you know, you have some lean years, and then you have some fat years. Well, we're on a lean year, so it's just, this is the way budgeting goes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or commentary about budget or what?
Did it all make sense to you? We've talked, I feel like we've talked a lot about it.
We've also been talking about curriculum as it applies there too, because we have a curriculum add and spend,
Yep,
and a curriculum cycle that will come back around.
yep.
It's a lot of big spends.
A lot of big, yeah, a lot of dollars going through. For all good things though, and needed, for sure. I don't know, I can get into a lot of detail if you would like me to, or leave it at that summary.
I just think the critical thing is that even in spite of how tight things are and the expenses that have come up, we still have a balanced budget.
We do,
And we were still able to give a step.
and we gave a step.
We gave a step. We increased pay.
To our staff.
We did give a step,
So that says a lot for you guys, and I appreciate that.
Agreed. And I think it's also really worthwhile lifting up the fact that even in talking about the spend, we are still left with a fairly healthy reserve. And still a reserve that's higher than it was 4 years ago, by far. And also I think it's, what was the total dollar, like the total number of the budget as a whole was, sorry, I don't have it right in front of me open.
oh, I can pull that up too, I don't either.
Oh, I forget the
I got it right here. The 6.2,
6.7.
6.5.
Almost 6.3, so $6.2 million. So when we start talking about balancing a budget and you're talking about large spends versus small spends, I think it's worth clarifying for people. These are not like, are you spending $500 on books or pencils? This is like, are we spending $100,000 on a roof, right? These are, you know, $6.2 million to operate a school for a year. And that is a pretty significant lift and task in order to do well balanced and still be able to provide all of those needs and those asks. And I know that you still had a list of asks and you were even able to meet some of those asks that were specialty items, whether it be related to athletics, whether it be related to curriculum, teacher needs, uniform, like, there's been a lot of other things that you're still putting inside this budget.
We are, and you have to remember the compensation, that's almost $5.7 million of that $6 million budget.
Correct, so teacher pay is $5.7 million out of 6.2. Correct.
That's where our money goes.
That's where our
is
money goes.
compensation. Yeah,
As it well should.
Yeah.
But we do also still have to maintain the building we teach in so it doesn't fall down around us. And I think that's where we have that conversation around capital reserve expenditures come to play. That sometimes it's a hard decision to have to do some of these projects that maybe someone doesn't always understand why we're doing it, but those are the reasons. And we're also operating a school in Colorado's oldest operating school building,
continuous use. Yeah.
continuous use school building, so, which is amazing, and I love that. Good work that you are doing there.
And you will see on that beginning, use of beginning fund balance resolution too, that We are using $30,000 of the lunch reserve, because that had built up over time. Casey's done an outstanding job
Yeah, I
building
saw
out her
that.
reserve. Instead of the general fund subsidizing that 30 grand like we've done year after year after year, she has built that fund up to where she's going to use that out of her own reserve this year.
That's tremendous.
It's tremendous. So I wanted to make sure people understand she's been doing an outstanding job there. Of course, we'll have to see where that takes us in fiscal year 27. Don't know, but right now, we're not gonna be, general fund will not be subsidizing the lunch
Which is
service.
a first,
I was gonna say, the first in what?
first
As long as I
Forever.
can remember, yeah, forever.
forever.
Kudos to Casey
So, yeah.
and
so-
her team.
Yeah.
And they still managed to bring the board dinner.
I know, right?
So, it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
That is incredible. Good work. Awesome. Any other questions? Questions? Mr. Cordray, I went business manager first, so now it's, your report time.
Well, I just have two quick exciting things. One, before the board tonight is a resolution for the board to affirm a mill levy override for the November election to support staff compensation into the future, into perpetuity. That's a big step for the board, and I'm encouraged that they're considering that resolution. And then secondly, I'll have the honor of doing onboarding with the incoming superintendent Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I'm setting appointments for people that would like to meet with her and I to discuss the school district. So if anyone's interested, please reach out to me and I'll get a meeting set for the three of us.
Is that this week, Thursday,
This
Friday?
week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of this week. And that is my report.
Would you like to speak to the staff surveys?
We have we did a nice staff survey from Sagebrush, a contractor out of Durango who's done good work in the community for Memphis United and other places. That's done a survey that I'll be sharing that information. It's been shared with the board. I'll be sharing that with the incoming superintendent. I think that could be helpful along with previous surveys to support the board with superintendent onboarding. It's critical that we get Audrey off to a really good start, that she understands the school district so that she can serve the school district well into the future.
I think it's also important to know that, you know, these are things like, a lot of people are talking about transparency. These are things that oftentimes are not really realized, but Superintendent Mr. Cordray, as well as Mrs. Hazelton, have been communicating already for several weeks. And she even has an email already, I think, as was shared with the community, that was shared right at the end of the year. So she's already really giving us hours of her time for, which contractually she's not engaged in. And she's also giving days during the month of June to be able to spend some time with Mr. Cordray. That was a concern that I had. And then you will be, and have made it very clear that you would be available should she need going forward, because that crosswalk of culture, practice, procedure, expectations, it is rich and it is documented and it is not going away. And so I think that we've done I say as a whole district, have done a really good job at putting certain things in place to be lifted up and not to be forgotten, so that someone who steps into the capacity of leadership as our superintendent, which is essentially our chief executive officer, can kind of bring herself up to speed. And I do believe that she will be reaching out to meet with all of us, to meet with the teachers, to meet with anyone who she can. Dr. Maribel. She's already reached out to Dr. Maribel.
Yeah,
So
I think all the administrators.
that's tremendous. And she's doing this before she even is contracted. So I am very pleased and hopeful with someone who will engage with the leadership with a lot of thoughtful care. And that is already being demonstrated. So I don't think we're gonna lose details along the way, especially knowing we've got some go back there. It'll be great. All right, well, I think that was the shortest report you've ever had. Imagine that. Because because he's like, I'm down to like so many days. Oh, that's all right, we'll fill the time. Okay, we do have a few, discussion items, and I'm gonna let you handle the first one, Mr. Cordray, if you would, please.
Yeah, so I'm very pleased to announce that our incoming elementary principal. We went through a really thorough process, had excellent candidates, had teachers and parents and administrators on the interview team. We had the incoming superintendent on the interview team, and one candidate just shined beautifully. And so I'd like to introduce Dr. Mary Maribel as the incoming elementary principal. So,
All right.
welcome to Nicole. So Mary, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a few words, I'd love to put you on the spot.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
I've already, first, thank you for the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to it. Had many elementary teachers and staff already reach out, and have met with a few, just working through anything from math curriculum to Tina, Laura, and I have met 3 or 4 times, just going through and trying to get some ideas about different processes. So really looking forward to it, and it's been good, and I just am excited to see what we can do down there.
Well, I will echo for the board voice, because I'm not stating anything we didn't all state publicly already. We actually were very hopeful and had discussion around you potentially applying for that position at the time that you interviewed for our superintendent role, and we could not be more pleased that you landed in that spot. I think it was just like meant to be, and I know that Mr. Cordray interviewed a lot of others, and there was a process and many on board. It wasn't for public perception, it wasn't a shoo-in.
Right.
It was a hope. We were very mindful that you brought so much to the table through your interview. I feel like we got the chance to interview you, which we normally wouldn't. It was Mr. Cordray's place to hire you. But just knowing what we were able to discern through that entire day-long conversation
Yeah.
was a lot, and really lifts up for me, and I would hope that the rest of the board as well, what you will bring to the table where we maybe would not have known all of that.
Well, I
So
appreciate that. Thank you.
super excited to see you in that
Thank you.
position.
Looking forward to it.
You're gonna get a lot of hugs, I think, over there in that
Yeah.
building, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Whether, you don't get a bubble over there. I don't think that exists.
Yeah. No, we did have that conversation about casual attire.
Ah.
Be a lot with stuff on it.
Oh, yeah. Well, it sounds really exciting, and we're very excited to
And
have
thank you for
you.
your time on Friday when we did the strategic plan. I know as
Sure.
an incoming that was extra, so thank you for
No,
for coming into that.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
You'll absorb a lot through that process year
Right.
after year since you were a part of that. Okay, any other questions or anything to add? No? Victor, you are up next for Town of Mancos and
Okay.
linkage associated with the town.
Thank you. So I met with the Mancos Board of Trustees, and that's again part of our linkage with our community. Our outreach as a board to hear anything that different community members or different groups want to share with the board, but it's also an opportunity for us to share with different community entities, some different highlights that are happening in the school district. And so I had the great opportunity to meet with the Mancos Board of Trustees. I will say that these individuals on the Board of Trustees for our town are amazing individuals that also volunteer to help steer our community in the right direction, as well as work together with our town mayor. And it was a joy to meet with them, really. It was a great conversation. The topics that we talked about were 3 major topics. One was Ms. Hazelton's appointment as our next superintendent. I gave them just a brief update of where she came from, what her experiences are, and who she is, based on what Ms. Hazelton had shared with us. And they are looking forward to meeting Ms. Hazelton. They are looking forward to meeting with her. And I told them that on behalf of the board, we certainly will make sure that Ms. Hazelton knows the relationship we have with our town trustees, and that we want to continue to support that relationship and build that relationship as we move forward. So that was a nice discussion. Then we also talked a little bit about the potential vote for the mill levy override that the board, that our school board has in front of them tonight. We again talked about, they asked some good questions about how much money would this really affect staff. I just shared again the generalities around the potential that this money could range from anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 in additional funds for all staff. And they are very supportive and just had some ideas that if we do decide to vote this in tonight, that there is Maker's Days and having a booth there and having some of the committee members, maybe even board members, be at that booth to just share some things about the mill levy. It's an opportunity to talk with the public about it and prepare them.
Isn't it, we need to make sure that it's appropriate or that we're allowed to be at that booth.
We wouldn't as board members, but we could as community members. So we would have to be careful about that.
It's,
We just made the statement that as board members, that's why I'm clarifying it. And Todd, what you may have to crosswalk to Mrs. Hazelton is that committee, whomever it landed with, maybe you could connect them to that possibility, so we can,
we have to walk a very.
Very
Once
carefully.
once we go through this tonight, we have
Let
to
me
walk.
clarify, please. The main idea was the committee would run this, but
good,
right,
perfect. So the
that's what was
committee's gotta,
communicated.
okay,
And
they've
that
gotta
the board
connect to the
members, like Rachel said, as a citizen and not a board member, we certainly can be present. But it's a fine line. So maybe the best thing to do is that just our committee works that out.
And that's Maker's Days booth, right?
Right,
That was
and
the
then
idea.
there's another one, and Rachel, please help me.
Borough Fest.
What is it?
Borough Fest.
Borough Fest
And
is
it's the
another opportunity
20
for this committee, because if we vote yes today, then the committee could be formed and could come together and have a booth at the Borough Fest.
So I read through some Secretary of State stuff regarding this, and we can talk about the facts of the mill levy override. We cannot endorse or discourage it.
We cannot give an opinion, but we can
Right,
talk about the facts.
we have to stay away from opinion, but we can cite fact
Yes.
as board
Thanks.
members.
Okay.
But I also know that we have a committee, like,
No, and that's what the committee is supposed to be there to build this up.
yeah,
Yeah.
You know, and we can say all we want, like tonight before we approve this, we can.
yeah, we can say whatever we want right now.
Rah, right now, but once we put this out as a resolution, we have to be very careful about how we speak about the mill levy as board members.
Okay, so we had a good discussion about that. They're really supportive of it, and I think that they'll do everything they can to try to support it. And then the last topic we talked about was portrait of a graduate. Really shared exactly what portrait of a graduate was. We talked about this being soft skills, but we talked about this being a K-12, a pre-K-12 mission, and that this is a work in progress, and that we continue to build and rebuild and we had some good discussion around how you assess whether kids have those skills. And that was a really good discussion, and so, you know, I really appreciate their thoughtfulness. They hadn't heard necessarily the portrait of a graduate work that we're doing, so it was real informative for them. You know, as I said, I'm really impressed with this group and feel like our town's in good hands with this, with our mayor and with this, with the board of trustees. That's my report.
Excellent.
Victor, did you discuss their tax initiative in relation to our mill levy?
We did not discuss it in detail, but what they did say was that they are going to present that in April of some time, because that's the schedule of when voters would vote on this, so that it's not going to interfere with our proposal that happens in November if it occurs. This is going to happen next.
So they're gonna push it
That's
forward.
a town vote.
Yeah, it's a town.
It's not a November
Okay.
Yeah,
ballot
it's
initiative.
not a ballot, it won't be on a ballot. And then lastly, I do want to bring up to the board the one thing they did, you know, we did talk about. I put out there that as a board, we certainly want to keep our relationship going. We have a strong relationship with the city, and we talked about meeting sometime in September, possibly October. And they said they were absolutely wanting to see that happen. And that they would like, as soon as Ms. Hazelton is on board working, they will reach out to her, have a meeting with her, and try to set up a date and time where the board can possibly meet. I already said our board is certainly interested in meeting with them. I think we've talked about it before, so I had no hesitation about that.
That's a
So-
really good segue into library linkage, because, and I will just briefly touch on this because we've talked, I feel like we've talked about this a lot, but I know there's a need for a public presentation. So, the library linkage exercise also has happened between March and, well, it's been going on for a while, but the actual meeting happened in, I think it was in April. And so that library conversation, that linkage actually looped into that conversation, the town. So the town of Mancos, the Mancos Public Library District, they're their own district, as well as the Mancos School District, those three entities actually have a contractual alliance to be on each other's boards to a degree. So the town and the school approve items that the library is doing as per that agreement when the library district came to the town of Mancos. And then the town is obviously asking to be linked into the school district. So it seems as though not only do we need to sit down and come up with that structure around just the town and the school district, but it really needs to be inclusive of those three entities, and in an effort to work smarter, not harder, we should probably align some of that meeting time so we're not going back and going back and going back, right? Otherwise you're meeting too many times. So I would lift that up to, we will lift that up, Mr. Cordray, to Mrs. Hazelton for kind of the need. And that will align that linkage, which has gotten off to a tremendous start. It was a great meeting. Audion Farrar, Sarah Carr, Olivia Jukes, myself, Katie Volpe, we all attended, and between student voice, parent voice, teacher voice, we had a lot of really great realignment is what I want to say. Jared was extremely excited, as were our teachers and even Liv, about working together closer, opening the library to certain opportunities where it was outside of the boundaries maybe of library hours, but within school hours. The big already accomplished task, and this is a big deal, is that every incoming secondary student next year will automatically, with an opt-out, there is an opt-out, but will automatically be signed up for a library card so that they will be able to utilize the library and all of its services automatically. That will eventually track all the way back to hopefully preschool or kinder, where every single student in this district will be a holder of a library card, unless there's an extenuating circumstance. That will set forth that ongoing relationship and use of those two entities, which we really just haven't been able to get some type of a cadence set. It's not without intention on both sides, but there's been no real cadence. And speaking as a parent of a secondary student, that is more noticed in secondary than primary, since we do have an elementary library in place. Doesn't mean we can't still work together to elevate that even more. So I walked away from the launch of that linkage and then hearing Audion and Mr. Hughes, Mr. Hughes was there too, Mr. Hughes and others kind of circle back to already we've done this work. And so that's very positive stuff. Taxpayer dollars at work, quite frankly. And I get excited about the fact that my son and all of our kids will have a library to go to, even though it's not a Dewey Decimal System and a card file, they still have to learn how to do all of those items we had to do just in the newer way. So exciting stuff, and it's gonna tie back into the town. Okay, another just kind of housekeeping item here is that we do have our board retreat on July 9th, also ties to the library, because we will be meeting in the library workroom. That will go from 9 to 5 on July 9th at the library workroom. So that, I'm grateful for that ability to step outside of this room. Thank you, Dr. Marable.
Welcome.
And then moving on, we are going to step into, I'd like to lift up and thank the board for their participation last Friday. The board, as well as I'd like to thank many of the staff, Mr. Cordray, his administration, Dr. Marable, who just left. We had a full room full of people to do a thorough review, revisit and review of the strategic plan. It was a 6-hour working lunch, 6-hour meeting. There was a lot of good stuff that came out of it. And we had a deep dive during that day into 4A and 4D. And that is what is next up on our agenda, is to the opportunity to accept those two objective reports if anybody would like to make those motions. Or bring forth anything that they'd like to say about it. Thank you all that are looking.
I'd like to move that we accept objective 4A and 4D, and I think we talked about approaching standard.
We were approaching for both, I'm just checking.
I believe 4A is at and 4D is approaching, but please double check.
Okay. You are correct. I revised my motion, objective 4A at and 4D approaching. Thank
Okay,
you.
we have a first,
Second that.
we have a second. Is there time for some discussion? Anybody want to lift anything up from the amount of time that we spent on this?
It was a lot of time.
It was a lot of time, but I want to say a couple really great things. We really pushed this year mostly on growth for both. We mostly did math and reading for anybody who isn't looking at the strat plan. And overall, our school did amazing. They really reached, they grew so much in both of them. You know, K-5 was in, you know, the 50.5 percentile, and for those that don't know, 50% means that they're at grade level for across the entire nation. So anything above that means that our kids are above grade level.
In almost every single line item.
Yes.
And those that
across
were
the board.
below were barely below.
Barely. I mean, we had one that was 49.5.
Yeah, or
So, and then in the, you know, the middle school, we're at 54. You know, the 50.6 high school was amazing. 68.5, 55.5, 51, and then theirs was like 49.5 in the growth for, or for achievement for, what's that one for, in math. And with that, you know, if you start out really high, there's not a lot of room to go. And so, you know, you don't have a lot of growth there because they're already really high. And I wanna say it was our sophomore class did amazing this year. So, I mean, just overall, our staff is awesome. Our testing did great. I mean, our students showed up and did the testing, so I'm really proud of what they did this year. I think it was fantastic. So at standard is a great place to be, because that means that everyone is where, you know, they're at grade level, they're doing good. In order to be above standard, I don't know if that's something ever even achievable. It's a great goal to have, but at standard is absolutely phenomenal. So I think our staff did it fantastic with that.
I'd lift up also that Tira was present and presented quite a bit of data that we, up to this point, haven't really been able to get our hands on through the Early Learning Center, and she did, through Gold Standards, a presentation as to where our students were at beginning of year and then end of year, and essentially it demonstrated that 80.95% of our students are meeting expectation, and almost 10% are above expectations. And the goal was that 10% are fewer below expectations, so the goal was met. It was a really good, and that's a tough place to assess, because these are 3 to 5 year olds. Like, how are you gonna test a 3 to 5 year old? They're not sitting down and taking a test. These are evaluative summaries, and it takes a lot of time, and they're literally individual children, teacher relationship type evaluations. And so I commend the Early Learning Center also for adding that data to the objective in the best possible way that they could. And what that brought forth on Friday was really rolling in and wrapping in the Early Learning Center to our strategic plan. So every year that I've been part of the strategic plan over the last 4+, it has seen that we've just notched up what we've been able to deliver and the accountability piece, right? So years ago, ELC wasn't even mentioned really much in there. Now they're becoming part of every single objective, right? Now we're separating out, like to your point, here's where we are at elementary, MELC, elementary, middle, and then at high, we even broke it down to each individual class. So it's a really great demonstration of how that transparency of data from what work is being done inside the building up through the strat plan to the board, which by the way is available for the public to review on the website. If you dive in and you really want to know, it's sitting right there, and they've done all the work, and the kids did all the work, right? I mean, they're the ones that are doing the learning, the teachers are the one doing the teaching, but the reporting is a whole nother step. And Audion's done a great job, but I would really commend the teachers and the leadership for putting all those reports
So the principals did
together.
a lot. So
The
yes.
principals did a
Seth and
ton.
James did a lot.
Yep, so it was a tremendous report. Any other things to note?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat, because I think you all already said it, but certainly we've had discussions when scores weren't that great sometimes. And so I just want to recognize our staff and our leadership and all the areas of and leadership in preschool and leadership in elementary and in secondary, and all our teachers in those respected areas. They deserve to be recognized for all the work that they did this year to create the scores that they created for our students. And again, these are one of the only ways that the board can really look at how our students are doing, and we all should just be proud, and we certainly are proud of all of you for the work that you've done.
I would also say one more thing. And this is gonna go back to the previous board, but the majority of it I'm gonna actually give credit to you, Victor. The previous board started with asking for data. And that board was sitting through NWEA trainings, and then you and I came on board and we sat through 2 trainings, and the data is really difficult to understand. And you kept on the data, like because of your experience in education, the lift for, we need to see the data and we need to understand the data has kind of remained constant over the last several years because you knew that it was kind of not really well represented and it was hard to interpret in the report. So if you go back to reports that are 3-4 years old, it doesn't look anything like this report. And so I think that the understandable presentation of the data is as a result of this board working and you specifically working along with Audion, all of that leadership to make it presentable, because it's not easy to understand at all. And so now we have something we can actually see and we all understand. And I think an incoming board member would be able to understand it easier too. Because we didn't start there, that's for sure. And I don't know how they dig through all of it, but they do. So we have a first and we have a second at standard for 4A and approaching standard for D. Without further conversation, Heather, will you please call the question?
Mr. Benali?
Aye.
Mr. Figueroa?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Ms. Hutchison Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Porter?
Motion carries 5-0. Excellent. Okay, we are moving on to consent motion.
I move that we approve A through F as consent.
May I add J to that as well?
What's that?
May I add J to that as
The
well?
budget.
J? Oh, yeah, okay.
So A through F,
And
Or
J.
A, oh, sorry.
Yeah, A through F and J.
everybody look at your agendas to make sure we're all on the
Right.
same
I
page.
want to pull F so we can talk about it, but that's okay.
So then you gotta amend the agenda, you gotta amend the motion.
Okay. Fine. A through E and J is an amended motion
I'll
by
second.
consent.
So we have a first, we have a second, do we have discussion? No discussion, Heather call the question.
Mr. Benali?
Aye.
Mr. Figueroa?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Ms. Hutchison Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Porter?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay, so now we're gonna go down the line here. Okay, G, oh no, sorry, F. So F is policy and policy listing. So Rachel, I'll let you lead that discussion.
Oh, we need to have a motion for discussion.
That's true, we do need to have a motion for discussion. Sorry.
So,
Thanks, Tim.
I would move that we approve the action of F, second reading adoption of policies.
Okay, so we have a motion, do we have a second?
And then also the first review of the other ones too.
Let's just, yeah,
You gotta go to the second page, sorry.
it's fine.
It's a split page.
Well, I mean, F is second reading adoption of policy.
Yeah, it's fine, but we're just gonna use this as our roadmap, so.
So which one are we
Yeah.
looking at?
Right now, it's all of them. The
All of
motion
them are
is just for all of them.
inclusive,
Okay.
and so we have a first, do we have a second, and then we go to discussion.
I second.
So we have a second, now we go to discussion, and then we roundtable discussion, before we come to vote. Oh, thank God Tim keeps me formal.
All right, discussion. Do I need to go through all those items that we did before?
Nope, anything that you have that you would like to bring to light
So all those
for
items were part
consideration.
of the motion.
Correct.
Okay.
correct?
So the one that I would then have is BCAE2, Code of Ethics for School Board Members. Due to the fact that we already have on number 1, board members will serve in the interests of citizens of the entire school district. Members recognize this responsibility to the whole to be greater than, and under D of that, conflicts based upon being a relative of an employee of the district. Because we have that, I would like to strike number 7. 7 says basically the same thing, only it adds in that therefore, the Board of Education highly discourages spousal service with an elective Board of Education seat, thus possibility of voting recusal and other hurdles. I believe that we should strike number 7 because our community is too small. I think that it really limits the pool of who we could get as a board member. And since it's already stated up above, I think it's redundant and that we don't need it.
Discussion?
I don't know that it's redundant. I think it's in the upper portion of the policy, it's inferred, but it's not officially concretely stated. And I'm not saying that it's limiting either. I think it's just, I think it's offering transparency that this is what we're saying in policy, that we are going to consider and be mindful that we are going to understand if we have any of those conflicts, and to bring them up actively, proactively. That's the way that I read it. So I think it needs to be in there to offer that transparency.
So, I guess here are my concerns. There's two major concerns. One is the way it's written, where it says that it's highly discouraged. That language does not do anything for the board. The board can't act on that language. Either you're for it or you're against it. Either you can do something as a board or you can't. So I feel like half of this number 7 is it doesn't really do anything that the board can do. It highly discourages spouse or board members who have spouse in the district. So I really feel like that part right there should be eliminated completely. The bigger concern is the second part of this. The second part basically states that it highly, that this board, or boards in the future, can basically tell another board member, you're in conflict because you have a spouse that works for the school district, and eliminate that board member from voting on a current action. That creates such mistrust on this board. That shuts a voice off on this board. It does not allow a board member to participate in discussion or votes. Is that what this board is about? Is that what this board represents? It's okay to tell, to certainly recognize to the public that I have a spouse or anybody else has a spouse that works for a school district. But then to go the further step and vote that board member out of voting or discussing this is outrageous.
So I think it should be brought forth, first of all, I'm going to read item 7, which is the Board of Education recognizes the extenuating circumstances for any spouse or former spouse of an employee to have a conflict of interest, referred to BCB, or be inappropriately influenced through the day-to-day operations of the district. Therefore, the Board of Education highly discourages spousal service with an elected Board of Education seat. Thus, the possibility of voting recusal and other hurdles impacting the efficiency of the Board of Education in its process and service to the community. And where that speaks to is exactly where, Rachel, you went to, which was that the conflict of interest statement, which is BCB, specifically defines it as the intent of the policy to protect the public trust placed in directors of the school district for purposes of. Board declares that a conflict of interest is a personal pecuniary interest that is immediate, definite, and demonstrable, in which it is or may be in conflict within the public interest. A board member who has a personal or private interest in a matter proposed or pending before the board shall disclose such interest to the board, shall not vote on it, and shall not attempt to influence the decisions of other board members in voting on the matter. What this specifically aims towards is not to create distrust or tear down the efficiency of a board. It is actually quite the opposite, in that it is meant to, from a transparency standpoint, say, if a spouse is sitting on a board of education and a salary schedule is brought forth in front of that spouse, the vote on a salary schedule will directly benefit or not that board member. And in that instance or any other instance in which direct benefit may happen, the board can hold that board member accountable to recusal. Meaning we can ask that a board member who has an inherent interest in any action, if I build a barbershop in town and this board has to approve it, you all should tell me to recuse myself. If my son applies for a student seat, I should recuse myself. That is somewhat of where we're going. That is where we are, not somewhat, that is where we're going with a conflict of interest policy. Conflict of interest speaks to the avoidance of all conflict in terms of interest. Now, at the end of the day, this is policy. It is not Colorado revised statute. It is not law. So what we are saying is, regardless of the size of this town or this board or this school district, we are going to discourage it so that the board has an efficiency. Efficiency meaning we're a board of 5. Most things we need a 3 vote on to pass. Some things we need a 4. When you remove a 5th person from a voting process and you eliminate everything down to 4, it takes everything backwards. So then you're gonna need 3 of 4, not 2 of 4, 3 of 4. So it disrupts the process of the board. The policy is meant to address historical and future needs based around conflict of interest. I believe our community can support this school district. That's just my personal opinion. I've sat in this boardroom, I have watched these meetings now for well over 10 years, and historically I've seen it happen time and time again. And even if it doesn't happen, I'm not saying that there was something done. I'm saying the perception is clear. And that perception can only be broken with policy, intent, transparency, and trying to hold ourselves accountable to the utmost highest standard. And that sometimes means we're gonna ask you to recuse yourself from this vote. And we're asking that we do our very best to build a board that is not comprised of employee spouses. Because it can't be employees, that's statute. That's all we're saying. This is policy that is in other districts. We're not the new creator of conflict of interest policy.
So let me respond to that. Basically, you said what I just said, except with a lot of words.
I didn't say what you said, I said the opposite of what you said, actually. I
Guess
said
what-
that conflict
guess
of
what I
interest
heard?
policy is for the district, not against, or for the board, not against the board. You said this was against the board, tearing the board apart.
It does.
It does not. I said the
Okay.
opposite.
So let me explain why it turns the board apart.
Okay, and then we're gonna call for a vote.
It shares the fact that our constituents elected 5 board members for this school board. They expect 5 board members to vote. They do expect us to identify conflict of interest. That's not an issue. That's never been an issue,
It has been an issue.
right? But I'm saying it's never been an issue on this board as we speak. I'm not talking history.
I'm not
I'm
arguing
talking now and in the future. That's what I'm talking about. So when I say that it causes mistrust, it's this. It's at any time when there's a vote and I'm gonna be honest, I take this myself because I'm the only one with a spouse that's in the school, right? This board can decide to eliminate my vote at any time. For example, we're gonna vote today about salaries. In the future, any salary discussion, any kind of decision on who's hired or who isn't may affect whether I can vote or not. This board can decide that. Our constituents did not vote 5 board members to have 4 board members vote.
So, Victor, the way I look at this, if you do not declare a conflict, the board can choose to let you, to to say, you declared a conflict, we think you need to be on a discussion, we think you need to be on. But if someone does not declare a conflict, and the board thinks that there is a conflict, that's what this is about.
Right, or you could declare
When you don't declare a conflict,
Okay, Tim, thanks for that clarification.
that's all
There
I'm
are
saying.
many things that I would have to declare. Curriculum, we'd have to declare all the budget. We'd
Correct.
have to declare, there are so many things that I would have to declare that I have a spouse for.
Yeah, no, the policy as it's written basically says that you are asked to recuse yourself when appropriate, and that the board has a right to lift up the recusal if needed. But to that point, the board can also say, as a whole, we're fine with this conversation happening. The conflict of interest policy is not just around a vote, it's around the fact that you have a inherent conflict of interest by being the spouse of an employee.
I don't have an issue with that, identifying that that's the case. What I have an issue is that I will not recluse myself for a budget decision. I'm not gonna say I should be out, because I don't agree with that. You will have to say I am out.
And that's up to us.
So,
And
the other
that's
thing
not
about
right.
this, the other thing about this policy, it's a code of ethics that we decide as a board that we're going to follow. Number 7 is saying that we as a board, reading number 7, we're going to go into our decisions with this understanding. It's not something that we're gonna, point at somebody and say, you. No, it's gonna be like, I am going to read all of the board packet. I'm gonna go through the information, and if I have any conflicts that I think need to be brought up, I am going to bring it up to the board for discussion, in discussion time, when we make our decision.
Totally understand that.
And therefore,
Totally understand it.
But this is not something that is specific in our current policy. It's inferred, and you can't infer something like that and expect that inference to travel onto the next board. Putting it in specifically stated as number 7 says this is the framework that we want our board to go.
So
into these meetings
let's
with.
say I'm going through, going through stuff. I don't declare it. What's that mean? What happens?
That's up to you. It's a code of ethics.
Right,
What
I
is your
understand that,
ethic?
but what if I don't recognize that I declared it? Like, I don't recognize that there's a conflict here.
Then the board, as a board voice, will ask you about that.
if they choose to,
If they choose to.
if
Okay.
they choose to.
So, okay, so what really is gonna happen here is that our constituents will observe this board constantly and determine whether they're eliminating one of these board members for whatever reasons, and whether those reasons
It's
are
not
legit
for
or not.
whatever reason. It's for a conflict, for a defined conflict of interest. Not for just any reason whatsoever.
Which is where number 7 came from. Number 7 specifically says, hey, we're gonna strongly suggest that if you're a spouse, maybe sit back and consider this is gonna be harder for you to navigate this path, because you will always have to be thinking, is it appropriate for me to vote? Is it not appropriate for me to vote? That is exactly why that was added to the conflict of interest code, or the code of ethics, so that people will say, do I want to sit in that seat? Because every time I sit in that seat, if I have a spouse in the district, I'm going to have to think about how I'm voting. And again, that just goes back to ethics, morals, values. That's just, what do you determine? It also states in this policy that if need be, the board as a whole can say, we are going to ask you to recuse yourself. If we
For this one vote.
Right, for this one vote. So let's say the mill levy passes and there is something that is proposed to us by our administration, and it results in large bonuses for just elementary. We would say, and maybe there's reason for that, we would still need to say as a board, it would be in our best interest, hey, you should probably sit this one out. That's exactly,
Or we can say,
or
we
we
don't
can
think that's
say,
a conflict.
you can vote.
Okay,
If you
but
declare
those
that.
two things that you just said is what my concern is. Our constituents did not vote for board members. They voted for 5 board members.
They did.
And so all I'm gonna say about it, and then it's over, that our constituents will look at this board, every move it makes in the future, because
Good.
it's going to see if you are trending, because there are many things that I have to identify, from curriculum to budget to personnel to all kinds of stuff, because I have a spouse that works in this school district. It will look at this board and determine whether this board is isolating and intentionally moving somebody out of a vote or a discussion because this board feels like it needs to happen. It will, the
Only
future
if-
will,
only
the
if
future
there's a
will hold true.
conflict.
That's really all I have to, the future will decide what this board represents.
It will.
So
And
I'll
the
come
public
back to
vote
my
will as
original
well.
discussion of this, and the reason why I brought it up is because the conflict is based very specifically on each individual little discussion that may or may not come up. I still think that we should strike number 7 due to the fact that we should not highly discourage any person from becoming an entire board member based off of one decision that may or may not make throughout their career.
Okay, we've had a lot of discussion. I'm going to,
I would like to see if there's anybody else who would like to comment on that and not just cut it off.
Well, I don't, all it says is that we're discouraging it because there is this issue. That's all it's saying. It's not saying you can't run, it's saying you better think about it if you're gonna run.
Then I think we need to change the highly discouraged wording.
okay, this is why I'm calling for a vote. We are going to a vote on this policy. Okay?
On all
Because
these policies.
on all of the policy. This policy is the one that is, BCAE2 is specific, we're gonna pull that one out, okay? Pretty sure I have the right to do that. So right now, we're gonna call for vote on all other policy other than BCAE2. And we will vote on that one separate. Heather,
We need to make a new, we need to change his adoption.
I will amend my motion as such.
Okay.
Victor,
we
you
need a
want to
second.
Correct?
You did second before, but now I'm pulling out BCAE2.
I second.
Heather called a question.
Craig Benelli.
Aye.
Victor Figueroa.
Aye.
Tim Hunter.
Aye.
Emily Hutchinson Brown.
Aye.
Rachel McWhorter.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. All the policies passed except for BCAE2. Now, we need a motion and a second. Then we will go for discussion on this policy only, which will allow us to opine if there are any changes to be made before we go to vote. So I need a motion and I need a second.
Well, since I'm in favor, I will move that we approve BCAE 2
As written?
as written.
As written.
And seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Now we will go to discussion. Now you can make your commentary for your request.
I would like to change the wording in number 7 on therefore the Board of Education highly discourages spousal service. I think we need to change the highly discourages as 1 or 2 possible conflict of interest should not prohibit anybody from running for this board. As of right now, I do not know what we should, I would like discussion on what we should change that to, but highly discourages, I think is too strong of wording.
I don't have a problem taking out the highly.
Okay.
But I would leave the discourages.
I agree. Craig?
Thank you. I agree
Craig
with that.
agrees. You have 3 with that. That's what you're gonna,
Okay.
that's how it's gonna.
Is there other discussion?
Okay. We are gonna remove in BCAE2, we are going to remove the word highly. I'm gonna read it again. The Board of Education recognizes the extenuating circumstance for any spouse or former spouse of an employee to have a conflict of interest or be inappropriately influenced through the day-to-day operations of the district. Therefore, the Board of Education therefore, the Board of Education discourages, I'm gonna, right now, spousal service with an elected Board of Education seat, thus the possibility of voting recusal and other hurdles impacting the efficiency of the Board of Education in its process and service to the community. That is how number 7 will be written. Heather, call to question.
Craig Benelli.
Aye.
Mr. Figueroa.
No.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Ms. Hutchinson Brown,
Aye.
Ms. McWhorter.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. BCA E2 will be put into place as item 7 written with the removal of the word highly. All right, now we're going from F to,
All the resolutions.
Gee,
let's
do we
get
start,
Tim.
start reading a whole bunch of stuff?
Well, yeah, you need to read them one by one
Do we
though.
need
Let's
to-
do it one by one, please.
Do you want me to take some of those?
There's a couple of shorter ones. Actually, first one's short. We're
G.
gonna do,
Okay,
So we need a motion and the reading.
so do I move
you
and
would
then go
move,
right
You
in?
you would
move by
move
reading,
by
yep.
reading, yeah.
Okay, I move to adopt the resolution, a resolution of intent to participate in the Montezuma, is that the right one?
We got the Montezuma County coordinated election.
Okay, coordinated election and appointed designated elected official for the November 4th, 2025 coordinated election. Whereas the Memphis School District RE6 Montezuma County, Colorado, the district is a duly organized and validly existing school district politically subsidized by body corporate of the state of Colorado, the state, and whereas the district will participate in the November 4th, 2025 coordinated election for the purpose of electing the school directors to fill 2 vacant positions on the board, on the District Board of Education, the board, and whereas the Montezuma County will conduct a coordinated election to be held on November 4th, 2025, the election date, in accordance with Articles 1 to 13 of Title I, Colorado Revised Statute, and as amended, the Uniform Election Code, at which the vacant district school director positions may be submitted to the voters. Therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of Memphis School District RE6 as followed. It is the intention of the board to participate in the coordinated election of the election date for the elected of the school directors to fill the vacant positions on the board. The district superintendent and DEO are directed to keep the board appraised of the necessary deadlines and actions necessary for the appropriate to submit a ballot issue for the above purpose to the voters in accordance with this resolution and comply with the Uniform Election Code and with TABOR and other applicable laws and election rules.
And I will second that, and just to add that DEO is the district election official.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Okay, so you've got a motion and now we need a second.
He's second.
You ready, second?
I second
You did
it. I
second, okay.
second it
With your, okay. Heather, or any discussion?
So this is just for the 2 board seats.
What it means is, we will have a school board election in November, and there are 2 seats available. Those 2 seats happen to belong to myself and Victor Figueroa. If we choose to run, we have to go out and we have to get a petition signed and we have to be added to the ballot. If anyone else in the district, and you have to live in the district, would like to run for the Board of Education, then they are invited to come pick up that application. It will happen this summer. There will be notice posted, and a board book will be available for those members of the community who wish to consider it. The board book will be available, which delineates exactly the work that we do. All right, call to question, please, Heather.
Mr. Brunelli.
Aye.
Mr. Figueroa.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
All right.
Ms. Hutchinson Brown.
Aye.
Ms. McWhorter.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We are on to H, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I move it to approve a resolution calling an election on November 4th, 2025, authorizing a ballot measure for a mill levy override, setting the ballot title and content for the ballot measure, and providing other matters relating thereto. Whereas the Memphis School District RE6 in Montezuma County, Colorado, the district is a duly organized and validly existing school district, political subdivision, and body corporate of the state of Colorado. And whereas the Board of Education, the board is determined to request an increase in tax support for the purposes identified in the ballot issue set forth in Appendix A, hereto. And whereas pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 2254-108, the school districts may seek voter approval for the authorization of additional local revenues. And whereas the election shall be conducted as a coordinated election in Montezuma County in accordance with Articles 1 to 13, Title I, Colorado Revised Statutes as amended, as under the Uniform Election Code, and whereas the clerk and recorder of Montezuma County, the county clerk, is coordinated election officials for the election pursuant to the Uniform Election Code, and is responsible for mailing the notice of election required by Article 10, Section 20, subsection 3B of the Colorado Constitution, which is the Tabor notice. And whereas the district will assist the county clerk in providing necessary information and notices for the conduct of the election, and whereas the board has determined to set the ballot title and content for the ballot measure to be submitted at the election called by this resolution. Therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Memphis School District RE6 in Montezuma County in the state of Colorado, an election shall be held on Tuesday, November 4th, 2025, as the election date, at which there shall be submitted to the eligible electors of the district a ballot measure which shall be substantially in the form attached hereto as Appendix A. For purposes of Section 111-2035 Colorado Revised Statutes, this resolution shall serve to set the ballot title and content for the ballot measure set forth in the appendix hereto. Appendix A is hereby incorporated into the resolution as if set forth in full. Tiffany Aspermonte is hereby affirmed as the designated election official responsible for the running of the election for the district. The designated election official is hereby authorized and directed to proceed with any action necessary or appropriate to effectuate the provisions of this resolution and comply with the Uniform Election Code, Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, and other applicable laws and election rules. Not later than 100 days before the election date, which is Friday, July 25th, 2025, the designated election official shall notify the county clerk that the district has taken formal action to participate in the coordinated election. Not later than 60 days before the election date, which would be Friday, September 5th, 2025, the designated election official shall certify a copy of the ballot measure set forth in Appendix A hereto to the county clerk in accordance with Section 15203 County Colorado Revised Statutes. No later than 43 days before the election date, which will be Monday, September 22nd, the designated election official shall submit the notice of election required by Article 10, Section 23B of the Colorado Constitution to the county clerk in the form of any specified by the county clerk. Therefore, at least 30 days before the election date, which would be Friday, October 4th, 2025, the county clerk is to mail, at least cost, the notice required by Article 10, Section 23B of the Colorado Constitution to the registered voters. No later than 20 days before the election date, which would be Wednesday, October 15th, 2025, the designated election official shall cause the notice of election to be published, if not otherwise published by the county clerk, and no later than 10 days before the election date, which would be Friday, October 24th, such notice shall be posted at the office of the designated election official in accordance with Section 1-5205 Colorado Revised Statutes. As provided in Section 11106 Colorado Revised Statute, the state constitution or state statute requires doing an act no later than, or at least, a certain number of days prior to the election date. The period is shortened to the ends prior to business days that is not a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. If a majority of the votes cast on the ballot measures submitted to the election shall be in favor of any such ballot measure, the district acting through the board shall be authorized to proceed with the necessary action to levy taxes in accordance with the approved ballot measure. Any authority to levy ad valorem property taxes, if conferred by the results of the election, shall be deemed and considered continuing authority to level the taxes so authorized at any one time or from time to time, and neither the partial exercise of the authority so conferred nor any lapse of time shall be considered as exhausting or limited the full authority so conferred. The officers and employees of the district are hereby authorized and directed to take all action necessary or appropriate to effectuate the provisions of this resolution. All actions not inconsistent with the provision of this resolution therefore taken by the members of the board and the officers and employees of the district and directed towards holding the election for the purposes stated herein are hereby ratified, approved, and confirmed. All prior acts, orders, or resolutions or parts thereof by the district in conflict with this resolution are hereby repealed, except that this repealer shall not be construed to revive any act, order, or resolution or part thereof heretofore repealed. If any section of the paragraph, clause, or provision of this resolution shall be adjudged to be invalid or unenforceable, the invalidity or unenforceability of such section, paragraph, clause, or provision shall not affect any of the remaining sections, paragraphs, clauses, or provisions of the resolution, it being the intention of the various parts hereof to be severable. The resolution shall take effect immediately upon its passage. Now, Appendix A is the ballot, the form of the ballot issue, Memphis School District RE6, and we do not have a ballot issue number, but it would be a numbered override. Shall the Memphis School District RE6 taxes be increased by $600,000 for collection in 2026 and annually thereafter by whatever amounts are raised from an override mill levy imposed and not to exceed a rate of 10 mills for the purpose of improving student education by increasing the salaries of all district employees, including attracting and retaining qualified teachers and paraprofessional staff by raising base salaries closer to the market average for surrounding school districts, and establishing an independent citizen review committee to monitor and report to the community to ensure the taxes are used for the purposes identified in this ballot measure. Which taxes shall be deposited into a separate dedicated account within the general fund of the district and used solely for the purposes identified in this ballot measure. And number 2 shall be in addition to the property taxes otherwise authorized to be levied for the general fund. And 3 shall be subject to state laws, regulations, and district policies for accountability and transparency. And part 4 shall constitute a voter-approved revenue change.
Well done.
I'll
That was
second
a
that.
Dang, we have a first and a second.
I did pre-read my copy.
I said, thank you.
Any discussion around the motion to go after a mill?
Just wanna say, just confirm, that was the wording from,
Until it's actually submitted to the clerk, that is the according to the resolution, that's the approximate wording.
Approximately.
okay, and that was
Yeah.
from, given to us from,
And that's
Honestly,
from,
Medallia
Our bond
Blessing is-
council.
yes,
Okay.
from council.
okay, cool, just wanna make sure that's what it is, so.
And we do have a committee already formed or partially in place. And we've had some discussion around Board of Education members' duties or responsibilities. And now it's in the voters' hands. So it could mean a lot of ongoing forever money that has to be allocated to our teachers as per that resolution. And so we'll look forward to November. Heather, call to question, please.
Ms. Bernalli?
Aye.
Mr. Figueroa?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Ms. Hutchinson Brown?
Aye.
Ms. McWhorter?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Woo-hoo, only 3 to go.
Thank goodness, though, they're shorter than that one. That one was the marathon, so.
And Emily, just for clarification, you said to teachers, it is for.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Staff.
It's
Let's
for
say staff.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
So I move that we authorize the use of a portion of the beginning fund balance as authorized by Colorado statutes, whereas Colorado Revised Statutes 2444-105 states that a budget duly adopted pursuant to this article shall not provide for expenditures, interfund transfers, or reserves in excess of available revenues in beginning fund balances, whereas the Board of Education may authorize the use of a portion of beginning fund balance in the budget stating the amount to be used for the purpose for which expenditure is needed in the district plan to ensure that the use of the beginning fund balance will not lead to an ongoing deficit. Whereas the Board of Education has determined the beginning fund balance is sufficient to allow for the one-time expenditure and the action will not lead to an ongoing deficit. Now therefore be it resolved in accordance with Colorado Revised Statutes 2244-105, the Board of Education authorizes the use of a portion of the fiscal year 26 beginning fund balance from the following funds. The general fund for $22,650, which is carrying over from unspent vaping prevention education grant funds collected in fiscal year 25. A preschool fund for $6,044, which will be used for professional development and supplies, and a food service fund for $30,000, which will be used for food costs. Be it further resolved, the use of this portion of the beginning fund balance in the general fund for the purpose set forth above will not lead to an ongoing deficit and will not need to be corrected in future years.
We have a first, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
I need to identify that I have a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Since I have an employee that works for a school district, I will not recuse myself because I don't feel like I have a conflict.
It's fine.
Well,
I think so too.
and we can agree with that, or we can say you have to vote.
Well, you guys need to vote then.
Well, I don't think that because this is a resolution to approve a portion of the beginning fund balance, as stated, does anybody have any issue with Victor voting?
I don't have.
Right, let's
Perfect.
move on.
Heather, call the question, please. We have a first and a second.
Mr. Bernalli?
Aye.
Mr. Figueroa?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Ms. Hutchinson Brown?
Aye.
Ms. McWhorter?
Aye.
Perfect, motion carries 5-0. We're not done yet, folks.
We've got 2
We
more.
have
Somebody else
more.
wanna read the next one to give Tim a?
Well, I can read this because it's got a lot of numbers, but you want to read the final one, that's
Sure.
very short. I'll read this. I move that be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Memphis School District RE6 in Montezuma County, that the amount shown in the following schedule be appropriated to each fund as specified in the June budget for the ensuing fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026. The general fund of $9,769,284.14, which is $7,313,792.14 in expenditures and $2,455,492 in reserves. The preschool fund of $408,019.15, of which $403,019.15 is expenditures and $5,000 is in reserves. Food service fund of $399,174, $351,174 in expenditures, $48,000 in reserves. The bond redemption fund for $857,883, $342,076.55 in expenditures, $515,806.45 kept in reserves. Capital reserve projects, $135,000, $58,563 of expenditures, $76,437 in reserves. The pupil activity fund, $277,389, $180,000 in expenditures, $97,389 in reserves. The total appropriation of $11,846,749.29.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Perfect.
I'm gonna make you read it then.
All right. Heather, are you gonna
Well,
go?
we have a discussion, don't we?
Yeah, there's discussion, you
I'm
gonna
gonna declare myself a
You're gonna recuse
conflict of
yourself?
interest, and because I have a spouse that works for the school district.
go? Okay, perfect. Heather, can you please call the question? There are remaining 4 board members who have not recused themselves.
Mr. Benali?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Ms. Hutchinson Brown?
Aye.
Ms. McCord?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. And we have one more, which is our additional capital reserve.
Item K. I move that we adopt the following resolution according to Colorado's statute 22-45-103. The Board of Education hereby authorizes a year-ending 25 capital reserve expenditure of $309,795 to Academy Sports Turf Incorporated to repair the high school football fields, track, as well as the practice fields.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion?
They did a good job with it.
Okay. Heather, call the question?
Mr. Benali?
Aye.
Mr. Figueroa?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Ms. Hutchinson Brown?
Aye.
Ms. McCord?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. All right, that's the last big movement. Yeah, it needs to go back. Well, we already signed.
I was like, did you give all of us one or just one?
No, I give you
It's just
all
that
one,
one.
If everybody got one.
just because it wasn't in the packet.
Okay, cool.
Okay. We are going to highlight a couple of different things now. Approval of the future agenda next. So this is our June meeting. This is the kind of the wrap up of the year. We do not have a board meeting in July. Instead, we will have a board retreat. In August, we will come back around and we will be looking at Objective 1A. We will also be talking probably fairly extensively about student board seats. Hopefully, we will even have an idea. We may have to vote on those things in September. It's going to depend on our timeline, but student board seats will become a pretty strong topic. The other thing that we will have in front of us in August will be our our rolling planning calendar, as well as our meeting calendar. As per the new policy that we passed this evening, that is now something that we are to bring to light at the beginning of each year, so that the board has a full understanding of what its obligations are moving forward with Mrs. Hazelton and the district. I would also bring to light that the policy that was adopted this evening, which is BC and BSR, and as well as KF policy, and there was one policy removed, is really more and more lending itself to the adoption of a coherent governance model. Coherent governments, just for the benefit of the public and for the benefit of what this board will be working towards, and I'm lifting this up for our July retreat. In July, we will be working with the Colorado Association of School Boards, along with Dr. Christy Center and Matt Cook, to look at policy and to look at how we function together. We will also be looking at goals and goal setting for ourselves, as well as our superintendent, which is Audrey Hazelton, and she will be participating in that meeting. And I would encourage ourselves as boards to consider this definition as we move into July. And that is that as a board, we have somewhat allowed ourselves to become embroiled in issues or operations that have prevented us from focusing solely on end results at times around student learning. And with a lot of transition happening, we have somewhat, we've had some contentious meetings in the last 3 months. We have reviewed now and refined our policies to start to enforce a discipline upon ourselves to get out of the management practices of the school, so to speak, and into the practices of what our expectations are. What is the board superintendent relation? What is the board conduct specifically? The superintendent has to execute their position without any kind of interference, but yet direction from the board. We had a member of the public address us tonight. We will have to follow back up and then direct our superintendent, Mrs. Hazelton, in order for her to walk that process and address that which was brought to our attention. And the same holds true with our staff, as well as our public, as well as our community members, and even our family. Without regular reports or compliance with, I should say, this type of policy, there is a distrust and there is a perception that the board is not working together. Coherent governance is a potential, and we're starting to work towards that, of working together better for student achievement and to model ourselves centering on that main one topic and goal. And if we are looking at our portrait of a district and our strat plan and those things, curriculum review, budget approval, those things that are defined as the role of a board member, then we are doing our job effectively as a board. And that is the work that we will further dive into around this session, this work session retreat, if you will, in July, is to challenge ourselves to become better, to work towards the expectations that our community holds us to, and that our staff and our students and our leadership is expecting us to model. And I've said it before and I'm saying it again, we're doing the work, we're on our way, but we do have more work to do. And it's good work to be done. And then we have an election. So there's a lot in front of us, and there's a big initiative on that election that will impact our district.
I have a couple more things for future agenda items.
Sure.
We also need to put on there that we have to have the superintendent goals and objectives that was slated to be done by September 1st per her contract.
Isn't that what we're?
That's what we're doing in July.
I'm just saying, but we have to approve them in August. We need to have that on for the August one.
Oh, you want it on the actual board?
I was like, yeah, so
agenda?
if this is for future agenda items, these
Yeah.
are things that we need to write down. BG was for, we need to have BG on there for a review.
Along with all of the innovative status, probably.
Yeah.
So there's more to
If we
follow.
get
We have a
those back.
summer to work on that, correct?
And then to get that board to board with the town going on, so we don't lose track of that.
I will also say that our, and it's good that we'll approve it in August, but our rolling planning calendar that we've followed historically will shift because of the fact that we are shifting this goals process. So rather than place it immediately, I'm letting Casby and Dr. Center, I'm gonna let them lead us through this and tell us, here's historically where it's been, this is how it works, this is how the cadence goes. So that's part of that July work, so that we're all aligned and we're not, it's interesting because strat plan as well as some of our own calendar work has not always been aligned. As much as we tried to put process in place, our process was, right Todd? Like you're over there like kind of smiling. Some of our process was a bit like out of place. Doesn't mean it wasn't good, it just wasn't really what it could have been. So we're making these improvements and I think that Casby will help us through that. And so that there's that to come as well in August. And some of it may spill over to September and that's okay. There's a lot of work to be done. Okay, so as I requested last time though, if nobody else has future agenda items, we actually have to move. Or no, let's do our follow-up and then we're gonna move to close. So did we learn anything new this evening? Did anybody learn anything new? I learned that that resolution was really long.
Well, there's a lot of details to elections.
Yes, there are.
Were you surprised by, unprepared for, anything during the actual meeting?
I was surprised that the technology grant,
Yeah,
I did not, I mean,
that was work
obviously,
session.
we got it like 2 days before the meeting, but still, as far as this meeting, I didn't, surprised that, we had been given, or we had been selected for a grant and then they were able to take it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that? Because that was actually during work sessions, so just for
Sure,
public benefit, I think there needs to be some clarification there.
So or go ahead, I mean, you guys
Sure, I'll
know
speak to
better.
it. So the school district went after a federal grant from the federal government. I think it's actually out of the Department of Commerce. And it's a huge multi-billion-dollar fund, and we're using it to really bridge the gap for the technology whole and to better serve our students. And so we applied for it. We have partners with Premier Wireless and T-Mobile, and it was granted to us. We won. We had a terrific presentation, a great thing. We got it. We got the grant award letter, and we thought it was completely solid. And then in this environment where the federal government is looking at rescinding stuff to shrink the budget, it was taken away. And now we're uncertain as to whether or not it's going to be restated, and if so, what would that process look like? So I just wanted to make the board aware that it's in jeopardy, to say the least, and we have to be prepared as a school district not to receive it. And I remain personally optimistic that we are going to get it. It's just going to require administration additional hours and hours of work to get it so it's compliant with the new federal government administration.
Thank you for that clarification. So we're watching it.
It's a wait and see still.
Do you want to add anything, Rachel?
I'm good.
But that was surprising. I think it was
Yeah,
surprising. as
prior
equal
to this,
us.
setup, yes.
I think it was as equally surprising to you, because you haven't known about it for a little bit of time, right?
Yes, and
Yes.
the staff is aware of it. We did make it a bill. We did notify the staff before they went on break.
So right before though, wasn't it
Right.
happening right at the, okay,
Mhm.
like last Thursday?
Yeah.
So, this was days. Well, were you able to communicate and be understood on all topics? Yes, no? Did the board cross into operations during this particular meeting? If so, when and how? I think we did really
I
well.
don't think so.
I think we're being very mindful of that. Were there any decisions made by the board at this meeting to be communicated in another way to the public? I know that there's actually several, and I'm gonna assume you're handling
Well, the
election.
neighbor one, elections and so on.
Okay, good. Is there anyone the board needs to send a written note to? I don't think so, but I do think that you're gonna.
Jubal would probably be nice for him to come down here for that.
Oh, that's
That
a
would
really
be
good
That's good.
idea. Okay, perfect. So Jubal, and then I'm assuming that, I know that man, he worked hard. He was amazing. I'm assuming that you will, since we're not gonna have a meeting, it's probably worthwhile asking if the board agrees that, Todd, you will relay to Mrs. Hazelton her need. And we've already seen Destry and others following up with Mr. Stubbs, but let's make sure that
Yes,
it doesn't
Yeah.
get dropped and that you all will. And I think the town also is looped into that.
yes,
They may need to be, or I don't know.
Okay, and I do encourage the board to look at the lights, once we're at dark, to see how they look. And when we talked about this months ago, I encouraged the board at that time also to evaluate the situation
Under
just
the
in
town's code while we were in our meeting.
Yeah. That's why I think the town needs to be part of the conversation for sure. It just does. So, okay, then I need a motion to
I
actually.
move to adjourn.
I have a motion and a second at 8:06. Heather, call a question.
Mr. Benelli?
Aye.
Mr. Figueroa?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. McWhorter?
Aye.